Welcome to this week's edition of Fall Damage Central. I'm the Mighty Bildo, and as usual, I got my co-host with me, Old School Legend Gaming. What's up, Old School?
Yo, yo, yo.
So, today, we tasked ourselves with an almost impossible task. Picking our 10 favorite games of all time. We talked about this probably 4 days ago. And since then, I've probably switched up my list 4 or 5 times. And when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'm probably gonna like, man, I should have included this game. Or when you start rattling off some of your games, I'm gonna think about it like, damn, I should have picked that one. But I don't know. I think I'm pretty confident. With my list here. How you feeling about it? You got your 10 ready to go?
Yeah, man. I had a hard time with this. I think I'm on my 14th revision of this. But so initially, I was trying to pick games that I had like nostalgia for, but I don't necessarily enjoy playing them. So I was like, well, that's dumb. I don't want to put that on my top 10 list.
Yeah.
Um, so pretty much my top 10 list are games that I had a really, really, really good time playing. These are also games that I frequently replay because I like them so much. Um, but again, like you said, this was very difficult to do. And I mean, I feel like I could do easily a top 500. Um, and even then, it might not even be enough. But this was a very difficult task. But I think I got my list situated, and probably tomorrow I'm going to think of like 6 other games I could have been put in place, but rather than what I have here.
Yeah. With my 10, I kind of went with games I had most memories of, I guess. Um, Games that I played the most of during certain points in my life, like mostly when I was a kid. You're not going to see any Switch games or PS5 games on here. I think this is my list of most nostalgic games that I have most fond memories of over the years.
Right on.
Um, do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Well, why don't you start off?
Okay, now this is my most controversial one, I think, that I have on my list. But at number 10, I got coming in ESPN NFL football.
All
So
right.
I I didn't want to put a simulation sports game on this list, but the more I thought about it, um I love this game. And going back to what we talked about a few weeks ago with how Madden has the sole rights of the NFL, it's just a sad state of affairs that the competition has died off with these simulation NFL football games. Um, I remember this came out in 2003, I think, 2004. Um, I was just entering high school. The one thing I wanted to do with my life at the time, all I wanted to do was be a professional NFL football player. That's it. Um, so I got every football game at the time, the Maddens, the NFL game days, the quarterback clubs, all the ESPN series. I think this was my favorite at the time. Um, they have some features in here that you just don't see nowadays with the Maddens because they get so lackadaisical or whatever the word is with their development. But like you could in superstar mode, you have your own house. They call it the crib. Um, and as you play through the story mode of your superstar mode, essentially, you unlock different decorations and music tracks and everything you could play in your crib. Um, and there's also a very good, since it's an ESPN game, it was like the whole thing was the ESPN presentation. So you had Chris Berman at the pregame and postgame and halftime shows. They would show highlights of your actual plays from the game you were playing, um, and have all the ESPN overlays throughout the game too. So it was awesome to just sit back and spend a few hours playing this and just kind of immerse yourself in it. And I don't know if I'm sure there's a ton of people like me out there. I made my own superstar, my own player, named them after myself, gave them, of course, all 99 rating, everything, and just went crazy with it. So this is probably the most nostalgic football game that I've ever played that really gives me a good feeling when I'm looking at the shelf looking for something to play and I come across this one. Gives me a nice warm fuzzy feeling inside.
Nice, man. I think that's a good choice. My number 10 is Street Fighter 2.
Okay.
So for me, with Street Fighter 2, the first time I ever laid eyes on this game, I remember I was probably about 8 years old, and we had gone to Walmart, and back then Walmart's had arcades in them. So like right as soon as you walked in front of the store, like where they have the carts and stuff like that, I think a lot of them have like soda machines and like the what's the gimmick where you could rent the DVDs and stuff.
Red box.
Redbox.
Yep.
So they used to have arcade games there, and I just remember me being, a little kid. I walked in there one time and I saw these two people standing at the arcade playing it, and all I saw was this guy with like super long arms and super long legs, and I was just enamored. Um, so found out what the game was. Next time we went to Walmart, nobody was on their arcade machine. I got a quarter from my mom. I started playing it, and that's kind of when the obsession with Street Fighter 2 kind of started for me. Um, just played and played and played on the arcades every time I got a chance to. Growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, so I had a Nintendo well into the Super Nintendo's lifespan, and the only reason I wanted a Super Nintendo was to play Street Fighter 2. One of my friends had a Super Nintendo. He had Street Fighter 2 on there. I was constantly over there, always playing Street Fighter 2. Um, Now, as an adult, I have several iterations of Street Fighter 2. I own the arcade one up of Street Fighter that has like a Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition, and Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I've got the Championship Edition on the Genesis. I've got the Super Nintendo version. I got the collection on PS2. So, and then I also own the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection on the PS4 and on the Nintendo Switch. So, yeah, to say Street Fighter 2 is one of my favorite games is an understatement.
Wow, and that's just your number 10.
That's just my number 10.
Nice. Is that all you got for 10, or you want me to
Yeah,
go?
that's it for 10, man. Hit us with your
Okay.
number 9.
So number 9, this was kind of one I went back and forth on too a little bit, and I figured since I went back and forth on it so much, it couldn't be any higher than 9 or 10. So I put it at 9. It is The Lion King on Sega Genesis.
Yes.
So when I was a kid, there was this thing called Blockbuster around, right? And my dad would take me there. I would When I was little, I wouldn't say every Friday, but pretty often we'd go. Maybe once or twice a month. And I had just seen the movie The Lion King. I was super excited. Like that was my favorite movie at the time. And then we were walking through Blockbuster and I saw the Lion King case for Sega Genesis sitting on the shelf. I was like, "Oh, I want that." But they didn't have it. They were sold out. No, they were all rented out. So obviously I was a little kid. I was upset and everything. We went back there the next week to see if they had it, and they still didn't have it. So my dad had to put us on the wait list for it. And then the next week, I think we got a call. Hey, we got one in. We ran up there. I brought it home, played the crap out of it. And then the next week we went to bring it back. And I guess there's nobody on the wait list anymore. So my dad rented it for me again. So it was like 2 straight weeks I played this game. I can't remember how far I got in at the time, but I I don't think I ever actually beat this game. But I remember like the levels we were jumping across the giraffe heads and everything and swinging from vines, and eating all the bugs and everything, and how the colors popped on screen. I felt like I was in the movie at the time, and for a 5 or 6 year old little Bildo, it was the best. I was super stoked on this game.
Yeah, that's a good choice, man. I'm a big fan of that game too.
Nice.
So for me, my number nine, I've talked about this previously on one of the other episodes of the podcast. Number nine for me is going to be Grand Theft Auto 3.
Ooh wee. Okay.
Um, yeah, I had a hard time putting it so low because like I like it a lot, but I feel like my picks for one, two, and three I like a lot more, and even like so pretty much my picks for one through seven I I like a lot more than I do Grand Theft Auto 3, but I do love me some Grand Theft Auto 3.
Yeah.
So originally this was on the PS2. This was the first quote unquote like next gen Grand Theft Auto game. So it switched from the overhead view to third person, and at the time it was just insane being able to do all the things you can in that game. Um, I don't even know like where to start with how much I love this game, honestly. But I've beaten this game so many times, and I never get tired of it. Just super fun. Like I said, at the time, this was like next gen, groundbreaking, all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Soundtrack on there, in my opinion, I think is the best one of the Grand Theft Auto series. At least on like the PlayStation 2 slash Xbox, original Xbox era. Um, I mean, tons of weapons, just all kinds of crazy stuff. I used to, I used to smoke pot a lot, man. I used to smoke that dro, and one of my most favorite things to do was on a Friday night. I'd be in my room, fire one up. I'd get in a car in Grand Theft Auto and go into first person mode and kind of blast the TV like on like head radio or game radio,
Yeah.
and just listen to that music. And it felt like I was like I was actually in the car driving around and doing all this other stuff. And I
Driving
mean,
under the influence.
yep, yep. I mean, silly as all hell, but I had a lot of fun doing that. And even to this day, man, I'm still a Grand Theft Auto 3 fan. And this is one game that I actually go back and play through pretty frequently.
Nice. That's a good pick right there.
Thanks.
So what are we, this is 8. This is my number 8.
Number 8.
Uh another one it was easier to pick than Lion King, but it's still kind of like, do I put it on here? I don't know. But I have a lot of memories with this game. Pokemon Yellow for the Game
Oh,
Boy Color. So, I remember getting Pokemon Red and Blue way back in the day. And those were cool. I played the crap out of those. But then Yellow came out, um, and it was shot ahead way far than Red and Blue in my mind. Just because the little Pikachu follows you around, and like many kids, probably Pikachu is my favorite. And when I was a kid, we went on a lot of long car trips to my grandma's house. That was probably about an hour and a half away. So I had a lot of hours in the back with this game. Um, I think Pokemon is what kind of sparked collecting, my collecting gene in me, I guess. I never when I was a kid I watched the cartoons and everything, but to this day I don't watch the cartoons or watch the movies or anything like that. But if a cool looking Pokemon game comes out, like a few years ago was Let's Go Pikachu, whatever, I picked that one up. And I just enjoy collecting the different Pokemon and everything in the game. Um, and Pokemon Yellow is definitely where I got that from. So that's why that's my number 8.
nice, man. Nice. So for my number 8, this is kind of a newer title. Well, not too new. But for me, my number 8 is the original Gears of War.
Okay.
Yep, yep. So when this game came out, I was kind of at a weird point in my life. Like I wasn't really gaming too much. I had recently purchased a PlayStation 3, and I really didn't know anything much about the next generation of consoles and stuff. I was this was like my club kid days, man. I was always going out and like partying and doing that kind of stuff. So much so that I the PS3 that I bought, I had it hooked up through my to my HD TV through composite video for like 6 months before I realized that I needed to get an HDMI cable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest problem was every time I played it, I was like, man, this looks like garbage. I was like, how does my PS2 look better than this? And come to find out, I needed an HDMI cable. So once I made that switch, it was just boom, like night and day.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but I saw Gears of War, and you know, I was never really into the original Xbox. I had one when it first came out, and I actually ended up trading it to somebody for a car. Um, so I just never really got into like the whole Xbox thing. So I knew the 360 came out, and I just didn't really know much about it. But I had a girlfriend at the time, and her brother had an Xbox 360. So I was over there, and he was playing Gears of War, and I was just like, man, what is this? So I was watching him play, and all of a sudden, I see this guy like chainsaw another guy in half, and I was like, "Oh man, that's probably like the coolest thing I ever saw." So I ended up getting an Xbox 360. I ended up getting Gears of War, and I played through the campaign. I had a buddy of mine. We played through the campaign several times, and I had a lot of fun with that. I was never really big into the multiplayer, and then one time, my girlfriend and I broke up, so I was just chilling at the house like on a Friday night. I was living by myself, and I had nothing else to do. So I was like, let me go ahead and throw on this Gears of War multiplayer. I jumped in there, and I had the most fun I've ever had in a multiplayer game
Yep.
in as long as I could remember. And it was crazy because before I knew it, the sun was coming up. I had stayed
Ooh.
up all night playing multiplayer. Um, Ended up getting into a room with a couple of guys, and funnily enough, man, we're actually still friends to this day. So this was
Wow.
way back when. Yeah, I've never met these guys in real life. Like I only know them through Xbox and
Yeah.
PlayStation. But yeah, every once in a while, I'll turn on the PlayStation, man. One of them hit me up. I'll hit one of them up, and we like to reminisce on our time at Gears of War because it was a very special game for us.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Um, and Gears of War is a great game too. I thought about putting that first one on my list, but didn't quite make it. I was a big multiplayer guy though back in those days, and I really enjoyed playing the multiplayer on that.
Yeah, man. Like that sniper rifle, like in my
Yeah.
opinion, man, bar none, Gears of War has like the best headshots. Like that
Yes.
sound when you get that dome. Oh man.
I
That's
love it. That's awesome. That's really good. So my number 7 will be on the Nintendo 64 Winback.
oh, I've actually never
Um,
played that.
oh, really?
Mhm.
Back in the day, I loved this game, and so much so, I think I have most nostalgia for it is because my dad and I used to play this thing together. I
Oh
remember
man.
one specific story. We lived in a small apartment way back in the early 2000s. Um, and my dad and I were sitting in my room. My dad was playing it. He got to a boss on on a level, and he played it probably 3 or 4 times, and he kept dying. He couldn't beat it. This is probably the most mad I've ever seen my dad. He slammed the controller down, went outside, went out on the back porch to smoke a cigarette, and I started, picked up the controller, started playing myself. And when he was done smoking a cigarette, he came back in and he's like, "Give me that controller. I'm beating this guy." And he sat down and played it like 2 or 3 more times, but he finally beat it. And that's the nostalgic memory I have with this game. But it's actually really good. It's a like you're a cop in it, and you're going through all these different levels, defeating bad guys and stuff, and you get all kinds of weapons, pistols, machine guns, rocket launcher at one point. Um, it's really, really good. I really enjoy it. That's why that's my number 7.
Nice. So for me, for number 7, this is actually a pretty new title, and my number 7 is going to be Elden Ring.
Woo wee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I love Elden Ring, man. I love everything about Elden Ring. I had so much fun playing it. Um, First got the game, you know, it was hard, pretty much like all the Souls games are, but like once you get the hang of it and like you understand the mechanics and everything, it's just such a good game. Um, Big fan of the Soul series in general, but this was an open world, so many places to go, so many bosses to fight, so many enemies to fight. Man,
Yep.
just really, really, really good stuff. I'm fortunate enough to have a wife who lets me game when I want a game, and if I tell her, "Hey, listen, I'm really into this game. Can we hold off like doing anything for let me get a few hours in per night, and then we could chill."
Yeah.
Um, so she's pretty patient with that, and because of that, I was able to really sink my teeth into Elden Ring. So much so where I got the platinum on the PS4 version, and then I turned around, played it again on the PS5, and got the platinum on the PS5 version.
Damn.
So I am waiting for DLC for it, man. I'm kind of itching to do another playthrough for it, but I kind of want to wait to see when this DLC is coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I had such a good time playing it.
That's awesome, man. You know, I was sitting here looking at some current games too, and I was like, I can't put that on there because the nostalgia for me kind of wasn't there. But that is a phenomenal game, and I don't fault you at all for putting that on your list.
Yeah, man, it was it didn't hit the nostalgia bone, but I just had so much fun playing it, and the fact that I want to go back and play it yet again,
Yep.
to me that speaks volumes.
And if I know anything about you, I think there may be some predecessors coming from that series, maybe somewhere. No spoilers though.
Stay tuned.
So number 6 for me is another Nintendo 64 game. Another game I put tons and tons of hours into. Star Wars: Shadows of the
Oh
Empire.
yes, nice.
Um, when I first got this game, I jumped into it and I was kind of upset because I didn't have a lightsaber and I wasn't flying around like a Jedi and fighting people. Um, but once I got into it, it is phenomenal. Flying around in I forget it's not an X-wing, but it was something else. It's like the first or second stage you start off in the game and you're flying around, you're shooting AT-ATs and uh shooting your little tow hook around their feet and tripping them up, making them fall, and it's phenomenal. There's one part, I think there's a level, I can't remember quite honestly. I haven't played this game in years. I think you fight Boba Fett or something, and you end up getting a jetpack like him too, so you could fly around the level and shoot enemies from way high up in the sky and everything. And it's also again one of those games that my dad and I played countless hours when I was a kid. Me and him are both big Star Wars fans, so this was a good one, um, and that is why it's my number 6.
Nice, nice. That is a solid choice. I did enjoy that one as well. So, for me, my number 6, this might be considered a little controversial, but for me, it's God of War 3.
Okay.
So the popular choice is God of War 2, but for me, God of War 3 takes that crown. And just as soon as you start the game, man, you're just destroying stuff. Like there's no downtime. There's a couple of times where you're solving a puzzle or doing something, but for the most part, man, you're just straight up just
S-
annihilating everything.
Slicing
Um,
and dicing.
the boss battles in that game are some of my favorite, even still to this day. The first boss you fight within like the first 5 minutes of the game is Poseidon, and it's a huge battle. You kill Poseidon in a very violent way. Um, you fight Hades. That's a badass battle too. Helios, the god of the sun. You you end up ripping his head off, and it's just
Ah, I remember
Yeah,
that scene too. That was a badass scene.
dude, that game for me, it just does it. It's on all levels. I thought the ending was really good too. I know a lot of people didn't care for the ending, but I like games that leave the ending open for interpretation.
Yep.
Not saying that I don't like games that have a definitive like end to them, but I do like a game where you can draw your own conclusion, and that's what God of War 3 does.
Yeah. When I was texting you the other night, I had the entire stack of God of War games in my hand, and I was like, "Do I just cheat and put all of these games, just put the franchise on the list?"
Yeah,
But yeah, I played God of War 1 and 2, the collection on the PS3, and that made me go out and get every God of War after that. That's a phenomenal series.
yeah, and I had a really hard time with that as well because I was just like, man, I don't dislike any of them. I think if I had to pick one or two that were just kind of meh, the God of War remake 2018. I didn't dislike that; it just wasn't my favorite. And then the Chains of Olympus. Oh no, I'm sorry, not yeah. So Chains of Olympus, that is one that I didn't really care for, and then God of War Ascension, which is like the prequel. That was kind of one of the weaker titles. So there's three titles in the whole series that I'd kind of be like, eh.
Yep. Those were which ones were PSP games? There's a couple in
It,
there that were
yeah, so it was Ghost of Sparta and Chains of
okay.
Olympus.
Yeah, I never played those.
Yeah, they're okay. I mean, they add a little bit to the lore, but not anything too drastic that you would be missing anything.
Yeah. All right, all right. So what are we on? 5 now?
Yes, sir.
My number 5 is what you put at like 8 or 9 or something, but Grand Theft Auto 3.
Ah,
Grand Theft Auto 3, for all the reasons you said when you named it on your list. Um, I was, this came out in 2003. I was just going into my freshman year of high school, I think. Was it 2003 this came out? 2001. I'm sorry. 2001. I thought I was younger than that. So I was probably somewhere around middle school. Um, I remember sitting in my apartment when I was a kid. I would be up till all hours of the morning during the summer, just playing, like just shooting people's heads off with sniper rifles. Um, and I remember listening to the radio, like you said, you would turn the volume up and pretend you're actually cruising. I used to cruise around and listen to the radio too, and then every time one of my parents would walk by my room or come in my room or something, I'd quick and pause it because I didn't want them to hear any curse words or anything or what was going on. Like, what the hell game did I buy you? Um, but yeah, after this, there was Vice City and San Andreas, which I played those. I played the hell out of those too. But Grand Theft Auto 3 being the first like real open sandbox 3D game of the series at that time in my life, it was the first thing I ever saw like it. Um, and it's a goat. It's definitely a goat. And I contemplating putting it higher on my list, but the 4 ahead of it, I just couldn't justify it.
yeah, yeah, that's understandable. No, that's a solid pick, man. Solid,
Yes,
solid
sir.
pick. So for my number five, this one could be another controversial pick, but my number five is going to be Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin.
There it
So
is.
popular opinion is Dark Souls 1 is typically like considered like the best of the actual like Dark Souls series. So Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, Dark Souls 1 is considered the best. For me, it's part 2. And the reason for that is that's actually the first Souls game that I really beat. So back on the PS3, you had Demon Souls and Dark Souls came out for the PS3 as well. Um, I attempted to play Demon Souls, and probably much like everyone else, I just kept dying, and I didn't understand the game. Um, so a buddy of mine actually he he hacked my save, so I was able to play Demon Souls with like infinite souls and like pretty much I can never die.
Mm,
And it like I played through it and beat it, and like one, I didn't know what was going on. Two, it was kind of boring because like there was no challenge involved to it. So he did that for me, and I was just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I never have to play this again. Dark Souls 1, it was the same thing. Dark Souls 2, I initially picked up on the PS3, and this was the vanilla version of Dark Souls. And the reason I got it was I was in a GameStop and I saw the case for it, and the case is just badass. I wish I had my camera so I could show you guys what the case looks like. But it's a steel book, and it's got like a raised um, graphic of like the soldier or whatever. Looks really really cool, and I actually bought it based just on that case alone. But I started playing
okay.
it, and I got into it. I was like, oh, okay. And before I knew it, like I was at the end and I beat it, and I was like, oh, okay, sweet. And then Scholar of the First Sin came out, which was like DLC. So they have a vanilla version of Dark Souls 2, and then they have the Scholar of the First Sin edition. What the Scholar of the First Sin edition does, it came out on the PS4 and the Xbox One, in addition to the 360 and the PS3. It adds all the DLC for the game, and then some of the items get changed around. So it's I think it's a little harder than Vanilla Dark Souls, although I've heard other people say Vanilla Dark Souls 2 is harder than Scholar of the First Sin. But playing through that was just, man. So I ended up playing Scholar of the First Sin on the Xbox One, on the PS4, and then I went back and I played Scholar of the First Sin on the PS3. Um, I've played through Scholar of the First Sin, Dark Souls 2. I'm probably on my like 11th playthrough.
Wow.
If it's not my 11th, it's probably like my ninth or 10th. Yeah, I mean, I love that game, and I play it frequently, and I get everything, even though I don't need anything. I'll
Yeah.
go to all the spots and get the collectibles and do all the optional boss fights and everything. So I've got like every weapon crafted, every shield, every spell, like everything. And
Wow.
I still have so much fun with that game.
That's awesome. Now, what makes you like since you played it on the PS4 and Xbox One and everything, what made you want to go back and play it on the PS3? Just for
Uh,
nostalgia's sake?
yeah, just because I felt like I had some unfinished business. So yeah, I ended up playing Dark Souls 1 after that on the PS3, and that was kind of hard because that game is pretty glitchy on there. But then the
Hmm.
Dark Souls remastered version came out, so I ended up getting that on the PS4 and then then on the Xbox One. So played through those, went back again to the PS3, played through Demon Souls for real, um, played through Dark Souls 3. Didn't really care for Dark Souls 3 too much. I mean, it's okay. It's just I prefer 1 and 2. Then
Yep.
Bloodborne, played through Bloodborne. Sekiro, didn't really care for. That's another game I need to go back and try to play again. I just couldn't get into it. And then of course Elden Ring, man. You know, I just spoke about Elden Ring, so
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, so for me, Scholar of the First Sin is what started the whole Souls craze for me.
Nice. Nice. So we're on number 4 now. And my number 4, Call of Duty Black Ops 2.
Mm.
And not story wise, I could give two shits about the campaign on these games. When I buy a Call of Duty, I strictly play it for the multiplayer. And I know that's controversial because I'm well aware some of these have very good campaigns. But it's just the campaign is something I could never really get into. But the multiplayer, the competitive aspect to it, I loved it on Black Ops 2. I feel like every Call of Duty that has come out since, while it, it improves on the graphics and everything, I don't feel like the gameplay is the same. I don't feel like the gunplay is the same. Um, this game reminds me of a time in my life, my bachelor days, right? Um, I would I would go to work all day, come home, take a shower, um, heat me up a nice little TV dinner, and just sit in my room for probably from, let's say, 6 in the evening till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night till I got tired and it was time to go to bed so I can go to sleep and do it all over again. Um, my buddy, a couple buddies of mine, um, we've been known to maybe skip a day of work here and there. Like, screw it, I got some PTO. Let me take a day off, and we just sit there and game on this all day long. Um, I think the last time I turned it on and logged in on my 360, I was probably about a month straight of playtime, 30 days.
Wow.
Um, and to think of spending that much time on one game is phenomenal. This was back when I think what made this game so good, what I like so much about this game is each map had its own dedicated like 3 lanes. Nowadays you pick up a Call of Duty and you got 2 or 3 levels of height that you got to be looking in windows and so much twists and turns going through little alleys. People could be hiding behind a box over here or somewhere in a hole over there. There's a lot more places you got to look and be cognizant of. Whereas on Call of Duty, once you studied the Black Ops 2 rather, once you got a good handle on the maps, you knew where all the good places were, where people were going to be. I think that was half the fun, was knowing what your opponent might do and just trying to stop it or prevent it. Um, so that is why that's the number 5 on my list.
Yeah, that's a really good choice, man. I love that game. So much fun. Um,
Yes, sir.
I believe that's the first Call of Duty game where they had like that so much customization you could do. So you were able to take like the perks. You get like
Yep.
you could get like two perk ones or whatever. Um, you could get like a one main weapon completely decked out with your suppressor, red dot sight, extended mags, all that other stuff. You can't have anything else, but at least you have a decked out main rifle.
Yeah, yeah. And I played all the Modern Warfares too, and those were great. I love them. But this game is where it's at for me. This is the definitive Call of Duty in my eyes. And also, fun fact, on my YouTube channel, on the banner of it, it says "Welcome to Merc City." Well, Merc City is what was spawned out of this game. No, I take that back. Not this game. It was Modern Warfare 2 that it came from. But this is what really started to grow that Merc City thing. My buddies and I, when we weren't on, we'd text each other, "Hey, you want to go to Merc City?" And that's what it was. Call of Duty Black Ops 2.
That's awesome. Excellent pick. Excellent pick. All right. So we're on number 4.
Yes. Yep.
All right. So for me, my number 4 is Marvel versus Capcom 2.
Oh.
So I'm a big old school fighting game fan. So like pretty much from like up to Tekken 4, I really liked all the stuff that was out like at that time and before. I was a big fan. Um, so Marvel versus Capcom 2, man, I spent years just like playing this game. So it all started. I can't remember where I was, but they had a Marvel versus Capcom 2 arcade, and that's actually like a common theme with a lot of like my gaming is like I play something on an arcade and then I end up liking it so much and then getting like the home console version of it. But they had a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 arcade and I had the quarter and I was like, all right, let me kill some time. And on that one quarter, I ended up beating it. Um, no deaths, no nothing. I sat there for like 20 minutes and just beat the game. Had people around me
Damn.
like watching me and stuff. And
Rooting you on.
yeah. And to be completely honest with you, man, I didn't really know how to play. I knew like the button combinations were very similar to Street Fighter, which as you know, based on my number 10, I'm a big Street Fighter fan.
Yep.
Um, But yeah, I just kept doing that and I won. And I was like, oh, like I kind of like this. And then I found out there was like this whole like underground culture for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and I became a really big part of it. So tournaments, like competitive tournaments, like all this stuff, and I became really good at it. And man, it was just so much fun. I never got tired of the game. I went through a point where every Friday and Saturday I'd hang out at like my buddy's house, and there was four of us, and all we would do is just like drink and smoke and pass the controller around. You know, I got
Yeah.
winner, I got next, and I mean, so many weekends were just spent, and it was just the camaraderie that was built based on Marvel versus Capcom 2. Like that was like such a good thing. You know, back when I lived in Florida, I was part of like that underground group of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And, you know, all these guys became like game collectors and stuff like that. So out of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, like collecting kind of spawned out of that. So we would trade games amongst each other and everything. So a lot of stuff because of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but that game is always going to hold a special place in my heart.
That's awesome. That's not something I ever got into, but I want to. I think I have a couple of those games, which is just a drawback for being such a big collector. So I get stuff and I never play it. But the question I had was, since it's Marvel versus Capcom, Capcom obviously makes Street Fighter. The same characters are in the game. Are the same move sets and everything? Like, can you take your combos you had in like Street Fighter 2 and 3 or whatever, and then use those same combos in Marvel versus Capcom?
Yeah, essentially. So you're like, let's take Ryu for instance, right? Or Ryu. So you know his Hadouken fireball. It's half circle forward and your punch button. So it's the same thing on Marvel vs. Capcom 2. But when you get your super meter built up, you do a half circle forward. You press all three punch buttons. Then he does like a super fireball. Um,
Oh.
so that was like the thing. Like everybody would have a special. Like you could store up your specials, and if you had three, you could have like all three of your characters do their special at the same time, and it's a lot of fun, man. It gets really technical, but there's a lot of like characters that like cancel each other out. So I don't know if I would say that there is like a character that's stronger than another, because like every character has like some sort of like strength that'll like counter out something else. So like I'll take for instance like the Juggernaut. He's in that game, right? And he's got his
Yeah.
specials like the uh whatever, like the Juggernaut Crush or whatever. And that thing, it can wipe somebody out with like one full hit. But in order to get like the full thing on it, when you do it, it hits it. If you don't press anything at all, you just do the move, it hits that person three times. But if you time it and you while he's doing it, you hit, I believe it's like high punch, and then low kick, you get an additional three hits. And those additional three hits is what takes your bar from like full to like zero in an
Oh.
instant. But it's hard to hit that. So, you know, not everybody does that. And then the Hulk, he's got this one called the Gamma Crush. And pretty much what it is, he just like launches himself up into the sky and comes down with this big meteor and like smashes you. But what's amazing about that is that if somebody's jumping at you and you hit it at the right time, you can hit them on the way up and then like hit them again on the way down and just like do some nasty damage. So there's a lot of fun combos and like tricks that you can do to just have a lot of fun with it.
That's awesome. You ever think they'll make another Marvel vs. Capcom for modern day consoles? Because I don't think they've come out with them in quite a while, right? Like PS3 at
So
least.
the last one that came out was Modern Warfare. I'm not Modern Warfare. Marvel versus Capcom Infinite, and that was like super controversial because even now to this day they released like six characters with it. So if you wanted more characters, they had like the microtransactions where you could buy like when the Black Panther movie came out, they released a Black Panther character, but it was like $8 or something like that.
Damn, I vaguely remember that. Was that on PS4? That was PS4, right?
Yeah. So it's a
Yeah. Okay.
PS4 and Xbox One. But yeah, so I've actually never played that one because I refuse to pay that much. You know what I mean? Like they just need to release a version for like $20 with everything already in it.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
game's
yeah.
been out for a while at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I think they got whatever sales they're going to get from it.
Agreed. Yeah. They got to release like a Ultimate Edition or something.
So they do have Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 on the PS4, and the physical copy of that is actually really hard to come by. So if you look online, that's worth a pretty penny at this point. But they
Nah.
sell it digitally, so every once in a while you'll see on the store they'll have it for like $10 or something like that. I do have that one; it's good, but it doesn't top Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for me.
Nice. So we're on number 3. Number 3 for me, the classic Halo 2.
All right.
Halo 2 for me. I got a first look at it way back. Came out 2002, 2003, I think. I think 2003. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I went over to my buddy's house. I did not have an OG Xbox at the time. I just had a PS2. I went over to my buddy's house. He had just gotten it, and I saw him playing online, which was a newer thing. It was around, like the PS2 had a network adapter, but without broadband internet, it wasn't great. It sucked. It lagged all the time and everything. And not every game was built for online. But when Halo 2 came out, I saw my buddy playing at his house. He had a broadband internet connection and all that. I went home immediately and told my dad, said, "Dad, I need a Xbox, I need Halo 2, and I need broadband internet." And he was like, "What are all those things?" No, I'm just kidding. He and I don't know. It was a few months before Christmas, but flash forward to Christmas. I woke up Christmas morning, opened my gifts. I got my OG Xbox. I got this actual version of Halo 2. Like you see, it's all dented and stuff. It's been through hell and back. But I played so many hours of this through my whole high school career. After I say career, I don't know why I said career, but um, all 4 years of high school, um, I would take days off of school to play this with one of my buddies. Um, our favorite map was Zanzibar. Get on a Warthog, um, go back and forth from the beach up to the building, circle around, and go back to the beach, back to the building, and just shoot people with that cannon all day long and irritate so many people. That was back in the days before private party chats. So you had the proximity chat. You could hear the other people on the other team. But also, when you get back to the lobby, you're still in that lobby, the post game lobby for a little bit with the other team. And as soon as you enter that lobby after the game's over, you let your words fly. It doesn't matter. Like, screw you. Your mom's this, your mom's that. You suck, dude. And those were like the best nights of my life, man. The dual wielding with the SMGs. I actually thought for the podcast, we were spitting out names a few weeks ago. I actually thought of one called the Noob Combo podcast, but it didn't really stick. I didn't really like it too much. But that name came from this game. The Noob Combo being the plasma pistol. You charge it up and shoot at somebody when you see them. As soon as they come around the corner, you shoot them with the plasma pistol. It takes all their shield down. Then you whip out your battle rifle and hit them once in the head, and they die instantly. And we called that the noob combo. People will get so mad when you use it on them because it was the cheapest thing in the game, but everybody used it. And just countless hours put into that game. And it was a sad day when they finally took the servers offline. When they did it, it was probably been a couple years since I had played at the time. But they actually, when the Master Chief Collection came out, I went and bought that because I wanted to play the Halo 2. And I'm just not as good as I once was. It sucked. I think the highest level I ever got, that was my first run in with score-based matchmaking too, because as you get better, you face better and better people. I stayed home from school one day played all day with my buddy. I got to level 35. That was the highest I've ever been. 35 out of 50. Um, and then after I got to that level, I played the next day. I started losing, and came back down into the 20s. So, yeah, just a lot of fun, a lot of multiplayer action. I remember didn't play the story as with Call of Duty, but yeah, that's a perfect game in my eyes.
Yeah. So I got to admit, man, I haven't played Halo 2. I own a copy of it, and I've got that same steel case, and it looks exactly the same. It's like all dinged up. Um, I also do have the Master Chief collection. So one of my one of the things I want to check off my list is I want to play through the Halo games.
Hmm.
So I actually started with Halo Reach. I played Halo Reach, and I played that. So our buddy from the place we used to work at, Cleveland, he and we had a conversation one day, and it was I don't know how we got on the subject of Halo, um, but he was saying, in his opinion, that Halo Reach is probably like the best Halo game, and you know, like I need to go out of my way to play it and all this other stuff. So I finally went around and I played Halo Reach, and I loved it. I thought Halo Reach was phenomenal. So after Halo Reach, I started Halo One, and I just was not feeling Halo One at all.
Mm.
I thought it was so boring, and I don't I don't even remember if I finished it or not. I might if I finished it, I didn't start two, or probably like close to the end of part one.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't that enjoyable. I just thought it was kind of boring and just all right, come on, let's hurry up with this. So
Is Reach a prequel to the first Halo?
yeah, so Reach is like the first thing that happened. So I think if you play them in order, it's like Halo Reach, Halo One, Halo Two, I think ODST, then three, or it might be three, then ODST, and then
Yeah.
four, etc.
Yeah, so I have Reach. I have all the Halo games, but like I said, I never played any of the story modes. When Halo 3 came out, a lot of people say Halo 3 is a lot better than Halo 2, but not in my opinion. I think Halo 2 is chef's kiss, baby. Best in the series.
Yeah. So when Halo 3 came out, I ended up that was actually the first Halo game I had ever played, was Halo 3. And I had no idea what was going on. Like I just knew there was a guy named Master Chief, and you were killing these people. I had no idea. And then like the whole end sequence with the Oracle or like whatever, and then like you're driving, and and then like Master Chief like dies or whatever. It had no effect on me. I was just like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But like for other people, it was a bigger deal because they had that emotional attachment playing the
Yep.
first one, then the second one, and then it was like this happens in three. So I was like, so I kind of feel like I ruined it for myself by starting with three. I probably should have just gone back and played the first one and then the second one. But you live and you learn, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I would have never known Master Chief dies in Halo 3 if you didn't just say that. I think that might be because Bungie is the one that made 1, 2, and 3, and then they were leaving. They weren't going to make any more Halos. It went
Yeah,
over to 343 after that. So maybe they just thought, hey, Microsoft isn't going to want to make any more of these because we're not going to do it. But surprise, joke's on them.
yeah. So obviously he doesn't really die at the end of three because
Well, I
he's
didn't think so because he was back in 4. So
yeah, yeah. So that's why like I was like once four came out, I was like, well, who's the new guy gonna be? And then I realized it was him. I was like, oh, so who knows, man.
yeah,
All right. So this is what number three we're on.
yep.
All right. So my number three is another game that I had spoken previously on one of the previous podcasts, and that is Final Fantasy X.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I love Final Fantasy X. I do. My favorite Final Fantasy game, probably one of my favorite RPGs. Um, but I just have a lot of good memories with it. Even now to this day, man, I still like go back and play, and I have a really good time with it. But when I
Nice.
first got Final Fantasy X, I was working at Chick-fil-A, and I had worked tons of overtime like the past like 2 weeks, and I had gotten a beefy paycheck. And I was like, you know what, man, I worked really hard. I'm going to treat myself. So I ended up buying myself a PlayStation 2. I had gotten the Gran Turismo 3 PlayStation 2 bundle. I had gotten Final Fantasy 10, Max Payne, and I can't remember what the other game was that I got. But I threw in Final Fantasy, and it was I didn't really like it at first, but then I got into it, and I was just like, oh man, what a great game! Ended up getting like the celestial weapons and doing like blitzball, played a ton of
Yep.
blitzball.
Yep.
I think that's probably one of the best like fake sports games in any game, like any kind of like mini game that you could play in a game. Blitzball is the goat. Um, but yeah, man, I had a really good time with it. And then they released like the HD version on the PS3, so of course I went and I bought that, played through it again. They released another version on the PS Vita, bought that, played through it again. Um, and then
And
they
beat them
released,
all each time.
yeah,
Beat it.
yep.
Nice.
And then they released another version on the Switch. I bought that. I haven't beaten the Switch version yet, um, but I got it on the PS4. I started playing on the PS4. I haven't finished the PS4 version, and then the Xbox One. I haven't like I still have the Xbox One version sealed though. Um, so yeah, man, I have a lot of versions of Final Fantasy X, and in my opinion, based on all the ones that I've played, not that I've played every single one, but for me, Final Fantasy X is the goat Final Fantasy.
Nice. Yeah, I gotta say that's my favorite one that I've played too. That's the Final Fantasy I've played most of. Um, that's a good pick. I like it. So moving to number 2, numero dos. Going back to the N64, Legends of Zelda,
Oh,
Ocarina of Time. Um, I think this is the first action adventure game I've ever played. This came out in '98. Um, I was 9 years old, maybe. Um, and ever since I like my, I don't want to say that, I might give away my number one, but um, when I in the very first opening cutscene when you see Navi the fairy come down and wake Link up, and then you're running around the village to get your shield and your sword, and you go to the Great Deku Tree. It's just phenomenal, man. I don't know what there is to say. I don't know how to put into words the greatness this game is, but all the different tunics you can get to get different abilities. The blue ones so you can go under, you can breathe underwater with your iron boots on, so you go run around down there at the bottom of the lake and stuff. Um, it's just everything is phenomenal about that game. Um, and that's why it's my number 2, numero dos.
yeah, it's a solid choice, man. That's a really solid choice, man. I really enjoyed that game too. So for me, my number two, we're gonna take a trip to the Super Nintendo, and
Oh, okay.
this game is Earthbound.
Oh,
So this is an RPG that I don't even know how to describe it, man. It is just incredible. So when I first got introduced to this game, we were at Walmart, and I asked my mom if I could get a video game because I had been getting good grades in school, and it had been a while since I got something. And she was like, "Well, if you could find something that's like $20 or less, we'll get you something." So this particular day, I go to the electronics section, and at the time, they used to have like bins in the middle of the aisle with like clearance stuff, and Earthbound happened to be in there, and it
whew.
was like 17.99. So I was like,
Yeah.
all right. So it's a huge box, and the reason it's so big.
Imagine if you still had that today, like
Oh,
new in box.
oh man, I listen, man. I'd be able to buy a house with it, just sell it, and boom. Probably not that much, but yeah, man. So it comes with an instruction guide, or like the player's guide, whatever. So it
Mhm.
came in a big box. So I remember playing it, and The graphics are really cartoony, but there's a lot of good humor in it, man. Like a lot of like toilet humor, like fart stuff and everything. But
Yep.
then like I was having a lot of fun playing, like the battles and stuff, the story itself in general. The soundtrack is really good too. Just lots and lots of fun, man. Ended up playing that several times over. Um, Unfortunately, I was living by myself at some point, and I just ran into the money issues, man. And I had to part with a big portion of my collection. So unfortunately, that was part of it, and selling that off to pay off the rent. But
Yeah.
yeah, that I don't think I'll ever get a physical copy of that again, just because of how expensive it is. Um, but I own pretty much like every digital version of it, like on any kind of like eShop or anything. So
Yeah, I got it on the SNES Classic up above me, which you can't see, but I'm glad they included that one in that for modern day people that don't want to spend an arm and a leg on the physical SNES version of it.
yeah, I wish they would bring that to the Switch, man. Like release a port of that to the Switch, man. Put it on a cart,
I'm surprised
sign
they
me up.
haven't, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming it has to do with like licensing or something. I know they released the first Earthbound, which is like Mother in Japan.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I tried playing that, and it's just it's hard to go back and play that one because it is an NES game. So it's the graphics are incredibly antiquated, um, and it's just like it's not really intuitive. But even though as old as Earthbound is on the Super Nintendo, I always found that like it's still super intuitive even now to this day.
Yep. Nice.
All right, so we've
Solid
reached
number 2.
number one,
I know, I
numero
know.
uno.
Numero uno for me. Dun, 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 dun. Super Mario
Oh,
64 for the Nintendo 64. Um, this game released alongside the Nintendo 64. Um, and at the time, it was 1996. I still had a Sega Genesis sitting in my room. I was playing Sonic all the time. At this time in my life, still lived on Long Island, New York. I didn't know, and being a small little kid, I didn't know that the Nintendo 64 was coming out. But my dad took it upon himself on release night of the Nintendo 64. He went and stood in line overnight for hours, waiting for it to come out to get it for me for that Christmas. Um, so he picked up the Nintendo 64 and he picked up Super Mario 64 and he brought it home and he didn't give it to me right away. He wasn't going to give it to me till Christmas, but he there was a couple times over those couple months leading up to Christmas where he'd go in his room, lock his door, and he would break out the Nintendo 64 with the Mario and play it in his room while
oh,
and I didn't find this out till years later, but I got it Christmas morning and I opened it up and the seal was broke and the plastic the plastic wasn't quite factory sealed, shall we say. I never thought twice about it. I played the crap out of it and I loved it, but then my dad told me that years later and I got a good laugh out of it. But this game, man, I've never played a 3D game up until this point, and I don't know how many were out by this time, but from the moment you stick it in your console and turn it on, and that little camera guy comes flying in around the castle and then starts circling around the little green uh, pipe that sticks up out of the ground, and Mario comes shooting out of it. It blows your mind in 1996. Um, I've never seen anything like it. Um, you go through the whole game, you collect stars. There's levels inside Princess Peach's castle. You jump through pictures to play levels, and then in those levels, you have like 5 or 6 stars you collect. Um, and at some point, I think it's towards the end of the game, you get up on top of the castle somehow, and Yoshi's hanging out up there. I don't know if that's a very known thing or what, but it's a little fun fact. I forget exactly what you do with Yoshi when you get up there. I think you could talk to him. Do you know what I'm talking about?
So I've heard of it, but I've actually never seen that before because I've actually never beaten Super Mario 64.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's one that I got the 3D All Stars collection for Switch. That I go back to from time to time. My daughter enjoys playing it with me, so we'll throw it in and play it for an hour or two, and it holds up to this day for me. It was groundbreaking at the time, and just to turn it on and play it today, the feeling of nostalgia that I get is above all else. That is my definitive number one favorite game of all time. That's the one I did not have any issue putting number one on my list.
Yeah. Yeah, my number one was the same. But yeah, that's a solid pick, man. Can't go wrong with the Mario game, especially that 3D 64 one.
That's right. So
All
I'm
right.
anxious. What's your number one? I'm anxious.
So my number one is Golf on the NES.
Golf?
No.
I was about to say. You almost had me. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
So
I thought I misheard you.
Did he say golf? Are you sure? So we're going back to the Super Nintendo here, and my number one is gonna be Kriz Triz Chrono Trigger.
Oh snap! Okay, that's another
Yep,
expensive one today.
yep. So this was I had zero, or like no qualms about putting this as number one. Love this game. I don't even know what to say about it. That's how much I love it. But it's so good, man. Excellent soundtrack, like super fun battles. They got the humor in there. You got some drama in there. Multiple endings. I think this was the first game that introduced New Game Plus. I don't know for sure.
Really?
Yeah. So this was the, at least for me, this was the first game I ever played that had a New Game Plus mode where you could carry all the stuff that you had previously over to a new playthrough. And I mean it's just fantastic, man. I unfortunately this isn't one that I own an original copy of. I do own the PlayStation 1 version of it that came with it was like Final Fantasy Chronicles, and it came with like Final Fantasy 4 and then a copy of Chrono Trigger. But I do
Okay.
have I got the Japanese version on the Super Nintendo. Um but yeah, man, this is one of those games that's just mm, mm, mm. um yeah, I love it,
Nice.
man. I
That's
love it, love
awesome.
it, love it.
That's awesome. See, I couldn't put any SNES games on my list because I didn't have an SNES growing up. The first console I remember playing that I did have was an NES. Um, and an honorable mention for my list is Super Mario 3. That is the first game I remember playing as a very, very young child. Um, I think there's a picture of me floating around my parents, either my dad or my mom's house somewhere, of me standing in a diaper in front of my TV playing Super Mario 3. So at that age, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just looking at the colors on the screens, pressing buttons. But I do remember as I got older, before I got my Sega Genesis and everything, that's the game I would go back to constantly. Um, Another honorable mention from the NES would be Paperboy. That
Yeah,
was a game I loved as well. Um, and another game that I was really contemplating putting in my list was the first Last of Us game. That's a game that really made me fall in love with PlayStation again after being such a big Xbox 360 guy. Um, but with all the games that I had such nostalgia for on my list already, I don't really have that much nostalgia for that one particularly right now.
yeah. If we did like a top 50, there would have been a lot
Yeah.
more NES and Super Nintendo titles because I would have had Donkey Kong Country on there.
Yeah.
Super Mario All Stars, Super Castlevania 4, Super Mario World. Um,
Oof.
man, and then coming from the NES, man, all three Mario Brothers games, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Super Metroid, in fact, um, Goonies 2, like Rygar, Ice Climber, Balloon Fight. I mean, I there's so many, but like for
The
me, I
list
grew
goes
up.
on.
Yeah, I was primarily Nintendo, man. I had Nintendo for a very long time, and then I got a Super Nintendo. Then I eventually got a Nintendo 64, and then I was gifted a PlayStation. So I kind of made my shift from Nintendo over to the PlayStation. But when that
Yep.
GameCube came out, I got the GameCube specifically for that Resident Evil remake. Um, but GameCube ended up becoming a really good console.
Heck yes. I never put I never put a lot of time in the GameCube. That was my brother's console pretty much. It was always in his room, and I never really enjoyed the controller at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But in recent years, I've come to really appreciate it, and I've got a couple games up above me you see here from it. Um, and it is a pretty good console now that I look back at it. But at the time, I just didn't really get into it that much.
Yeah, man. GameCube. That's one of those forgotten about consoles that it's starting to gain in popularity with all the modding and upgrades and stuff you can do to the GameCube now that all these people are coming out with. A lot of fun stuff, man. So that was a good console. But overall, I was pretty satisfied with my 10. As I said, I probably could have easily done like a top 500. Um,
Yeah.
we'd be here for like 6 hours, but pretty confident with
Yeah.
my 10.
Yep. Yep. Same here. I'm happy with it, and we'll see how I feel when I wake up in the morning. But all right. I guess that's our top 10 video games of all time in our opinion. I understand that you guys at home watching this might have different takes on some of those. So let us know down in the comments what you like, what you don't like. Let us know what your top 10 list is. I'm curious. Um, but old school, if that's all you got, then I think we could end this one, and we'll see you on the next one. You got
Yep.
anything else?
Now that's it on my end, man.
All right. Appreciate everybody. And we'll see you on the next one. See ya.
Peace.